Welcome back to my channel. I'm Pastor Brian Anderson, and we are currently going through the book of Romans, one paragraph at a time. We're trying to keep our videos fairly brief, but I'd like to make a couple of summary statements and a couple of applications from a paragraph today. We're in chapter 1, verses 8 to 15. Let's go ahead and read the passage and then look at a couple things that we see from it. Paul says, "First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, because your faith is being proclaimed throughout the whole world. For God, whom I serve in my spirit in the preaching of the gospel of his Son, is my witness as to how unceasingly I make mention of you, always in my prayers, making request, if perhaps now at last, by the will of God, I may succeed in coming to you. For I long to see you." Where am I? "For I long to see you so that I may impart some spiritual gift to you that you may be established. That is, that I may be encouraged together with you while among you, each of us by the other's faith, both yours and mine. I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that often I have planned to come to you and have been prevented so far, so that I may obtain some fruit among you also, even as among the rest of the Gentiles. I'm under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to wise and to the foolish. So for my part, I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome." Now, a couple of thoughts. Number one, Paul longed to be with the church in Rome, both to impart some spiritual gift to them so that they might be established, but also he wanted to be encouraged by their faith. He wanted to encourage them, and he wanted to be encouraged. Now think about that. A great apostle of Jesus Christ believes that he can be encouraged by the faith of simple, ordinary Christians. I think that is encouraging, because that means that you, even if you're young in the Lord, even if you're not an apostle or a pastor or a deacon or whoever, even if you're just an ordinary Christian, God wants you to be the means by which you encourage others in their faith. That tells me that when we gather with the church, when we, quote, go to church, it should be our objective not just to get, but to give. I hear so many Christians say, "Well, I left that church because I just wasn't getting fed." Well, what about you feeding others? We don't go to church just to get fed. We go to church because God wants to use us as an instrument to encourage and to establish and to build up other believers. And we need to really get that down into our hearts so that that's what motivates us and what drives us when we assemble with the saints. I'm not going just to get. That's a very selfish, self-centered attitude. I'm going to give. I'm going to feed others. I'm going to encourage others. So try to adopt that mentality. Paul had that mentality. He was going in order to give to them, and he also believed that they would be able to encourage him. So both are taking place. We are receiving when we gather with the saints, but we also are there to give. Now, the second thought is here. Paul was eager to preach the gospel to the church in Rome. That comes out in verse 15. Well, who is there in the church in Rome? Christians. We often think that the gospel is only for the lost. It's only for the unbeliever. That's not true. Christians need the gospel just as much as non-Christians do. Not in order to get saved by the gospel, but in order to be encouraged in our faith by the gospel. We need to be reminded of Christ's perfect life, his substitutionary atonement, his burial, his bodily resurrection, his ascension to the right hand of God, his interceding for the saints there in glory, his coming again one day. We need to be reminded of the truth of Jesus Christ and what that truth means for us as Christians. We need to hear the gospel of grace over and over. We need to be reminded that we are justified freely by his grace apart from works. We need to be reminded that Christ has paid it all. We need to be reminded that his sacrifice on Calvary has perfected us forever. That's why we should even preach the gospel to ourselves. I mean, do you ever do that? Especially when you're feeling down. Preach the gospel to yourself. Tell yourself that Christ has perfected you forever, that his work on Calvary has paid it all, that He has provided forgiveness of sins and a free justification for you that you receive simply by faith in his work. That's why we here at the Bridge Church, we celebrate the Lord's Supper every week, because we need to be reminded of the gospel every week. Even as Christians, we need it. And so I want to encourage you, remind yourself of the gospel. Preach it to yourself. As you take a prayer walk or you go into your prayer closet, remind yourself of the gospel of Jesus Christ, because you need it just as much as lost people need it. I hope those two twin truths inspire you today. Be a giver when your church meets, and preach the gospel to yourselves daily, because we need it over and over and over. May God bless you. I'll see you on the next video.